So I'd say one of the bigger things that we talked about the trailer of a couple weeks back, Twilight Zone. Jordan Peele's new Twilight Zone on CBS Access, the newest reboot, premiered its first 2 episodes. We had The Comedian and Nightmare at 30,000 Feet.
Okay, so I've only watched The Comedian so far just because I don't have CBS All Access. I know you found some way around it, but I guess we probably shouldn't be talking about that on YouTube, should we? So let's talk about The Comedian, since we've both seen that. It's up on YouTube, so anyone in our audience has the potential to watch that. And I'm sure you can find that afterwards. If you just search Twilight Zone, I'm sure it's the first thing that comes up. Mm-hmm. So I do want to say, it didn't feel like the classic Twilight Zone to me. And I know they're never probably going to be able to capture that exact feel since of how iconic the original series truly was. Jordan Peele, I absolutely love. I've seen Us, I've seen Get Out. I think he's probably the biggest name in horror right now. So to see him in this capacity is kind of cool. My big problem with the first episode was that it completely underused him. Like, I wish he hadn't narrated more. Like, Rod Serling, I always felt had a more predominant role in Twilight Zone than I guess Jordan Peele does by comparison.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. And I think maybe part of the reason is because the episode was so long. It was around, 50-something minutes, that the bookends to it were so spread wide that, like, I almost forgot he was there. And I think I do like him, definitely. But I think he doesn't yet have the same kind of ominous presence that Serling did. And I think that might have something to do with, how the series is filmed. Like, it's not black and white. It's not really noir like the original, I guess. And so, when he appears on screen, I still half expect the joke to come next.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be weird for anyone who knows him strictly from Key and Peele to make that transition with him. Because, he's so famous for being just this great comedic voice, along with Keegan-Michael Key.
I have a vivid imagination.
It's, weird to see him if you're not used to Get Out and Us and anything else he's done since the disbanding of Key and Peele. To see him in a role like this is kind of cool.
Yeah. So let's get into the episode itself. So Twilight Zone, when it presents its twists and its strange occurrences, usually finds a way to keep you in mystery about it, at least for a while, to keep the whole reasoning behind, all the weird reactions kind of veiled.
The problem with this one was, in comparison to earlier Twilight Zone episodes, and again, this sort of supports the whole thing that it feels more like a Black Mirror episode than a Twilight Zone episode. And you've seen Black Mirror, right? So you can get that reference.
I've seen clips of it, yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, great show, very much inspired by the original Twilight Zone, except it's way more suspense-driven. It's way more, it's more like if technology went wrong, what happened. It's less pure sci-fi, more just like, I don't know how else to describe it, really. It's the kind of thing that you have to watch.
It's less paranormal and more...
It's more based in reality, yeah. Well, so I guess it's a different style of sci-fi, really. Yeah. And those are episodes that each feel like mini movies, since I think most of them are 90 minutes long. There's a couple 2-hour ones. Bandersnatch was about 2 hours if you watch it in its entirety. But so this first Twilight Zone episode was an hour long, which compared to the original series, which were all half-hour episodes, it's definitely a tonal shift. It's definitely taken a different angle than the original series.
Now, I guess we'll get a little bit into spoilers, so if you haven't watched it yet, go do that and then come back to this. So the thing I took a little bit of issue with was, which I was getting at before, which was that we know right from the start what's about to happen as soon as he finishes his meeting with the ominous character who is Tracy Morgan in this episode.
Yeah, they say the comedian, or they say the character's name. He's some famous comedian in this world who apparently just disappeared for some reason, which we can get into theories on that for a sec, but I can't remember his name for the life of me.
I think it was, I don't remember. But, so he directly tells him, he says, if you want to get famous, you got to give a part of yourself to the audience, but that once you give it to them, it's theirs, and you can never get it back.
Right.
And it's like, well, you know where we are, the Twilight Zone, so I think I know exactly what's going to happen. And then it does, and it, takes him 20 minutes to realize it, and it's like, where are you? Wake up, buddy.
Yes, that was the one weird thing to me, that the audience was well aware of the actual plot of the episode before the main character. Like, usually, what made the Twilight Zone great was you're usually discovering... It's like you can empathize with the character a little more. You can understand, like, their perspective, and you sort of understand what they're going through. And you sort of make the discovery of what's happening at around the same time they do. So this first episode, at least, didn't go in that direction. And I didn't see the second episode, so I couldn't tell you if that followed the same sort of pattern, but...
It kind of did, where what causes all of the strange events to occur is, it's very apparent right from the start, and it's almost, it's unexplainable. It's just, it's there, it happens, and it starts the chain of events, and in the end, I feel like the main character, at least in the second episode, wasn't as to blame for what happens as was the first.
Right.
But in the first, one thing I thought they really beat us over the head with was how much they wanted us to know that he is, for sure, unfunny, and that's the reason why he has to use this newfound paranormal ability to just basically talk about anything of his personal life, and then people start laughing hysterically, and whenever he talked about disappears. But like, you could so clearly tell that the writers want you to know he's not funny whatsoever otherwise, and even his quote-unquote funny jokes aren't funny. It's all just a magic thing happening. And they say he's been a comedian for 5 years. If he really is, why does he always lead with the same line that he knows gets absolutely no reaction? Like, that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I mean, he does that in every single setup, the whole Second Amendment thing, which just... I don't know. It feels like a weird way to set up each punchline, but I guess they're doing that for, like, comedic reasons, the whole rules of three. But, they used it way more than 3 times. But
I can't tell if they were serious with that or, like, actually try to lampoon modern, at least late-night hosts who just talk about politics, the same thing night after night, and then have it. And then the audience is like, ha ha ha, but it's really not funny at all.
So I think they were trying to get at the fact that a lot of comedians will hammer these points home without any sort of real point. It's like people have made jokes about the Second Amendment as long as the gun debate's been going on, and there's really not that many fresh takes on it. So, yeah, at least that was my read on it. So I will say, I think, first of all, Tracy Morgan stole the show on this one. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, he nailed it, man. Like, whoever would have thought that Tracy Morgan would be the best part of anything,
Best villain, best bad guy. This little smile he does at the end.
Which, even I don't really think is a villain. I think he's just a supernatural force. Or maybe he was like, they lead you to believe that he went through a similar thing that Kamal Nanjiani went through. That, his character had the same ability, but probably chose stardom instead of, and like lost all of his friends and family rather than
well, he's essentially just the devil.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's the devil per se. I think he was a human character, and he's just like passing on this curse from comedian to comedian for some reason that they just don't really flesh out the motivations on for some reason.
Well, the main point of the story was that in order to get famous, people essentially have to sell their soul. Like, sure. Everything that they hold personal eventually gets out in the open, and it becomes collateral damage for, in whatever the ends to their means is. Also, the other thing that we didn't really see him get that hugely popular. Like, we didn't see him opening for Madison Square Garden or anything really big like that, because he kept saying, I want it all, but he's still stuck in this little nightclub.
Yeah. Which, okay, so let me get into some of the problems I had with the episode in terms of the actual plot, like the actual plot holes. And this is like getting into real spoiler territory since this is the very end. So if you hadn't turned away and you still wanted to go into this episode blind, like, now's the real point, because we're really getting into spoiler territory now.
And we'll also talk a little bit about a few Easter eggs. Or just mention them.
So first of all, like, Kamal Nanjiani's character... Like, by the end of the episode, by the time he figures it out, he does this whole thing where he basically wishes himself away. So why didn't he wish Tracy Morgan's character away?
That's the point I see everyone making in the comments.
Right? Like, okay, so I thought that, like, the second I saw the episode, like, that would have been so easy. Like, he would have survived. He wouldn't have had to sacrifice anything, and essentially nothing would have actually happened. Like, he would have gotten away with it. It's amazing that the character didn't think of it, since it's such an obvious conclusion.
Yeah. I figured he would have at least tried that, but then nobody would have laughed, because it wouldn't work on him.
Right.
Because that happens a couple times where he tries something, it doesn't work. Like, he says he meets some kind of neo-Nazi on a bus, and when he talks about it, nobody laughs. And yet, in the same scene, he talks about a couple of hecklers in the audience, and then they disappear. So what constitutes being a part of his life?
I think, first of all, it's because he made up the whole thing about the neo-Nazi. It's like they don't actually show him referencing the whole murder thing. So because there's no truth to it, it doesn't land with the audience. That at least that's the sense I got. And,
that makes sense.
He also didn't know the neo-Nazi's name, so that probably didn't help either.
So there were a few Easter eggs that you could notice if you're an astute viewer. Right at the beginning, there's a big mural, I guess, of a whole big audience, and some of the faces in there you could see have like the pig face thing from the episode where the lady's trying to get plastic surgery because she thinks she's ugly, but then everybody's pig people. There's some from the episode with those people who have to put on those masks. They're like trying to inherit this old guy's fortune,
and they end up ugly.
He says put on these masks, and each of them represents some twisted characteristic that you all hold, and when they take them off, they have these ugly faces. So you can see that there. You can see the dummy from that one episode with I guess it was a comedian and a dummy.
Right.
And it basically came to life, and it was trying to persuade him to do things, kind of like the ventriloquist from Batman.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's sitting in there.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things. First of all, I think that whole thing was sort of a reference to The Shining. That whole ending there. Them up in the bar, up against the wall. You see the paintings, and it's like he's always been there because since he never existed, he's always sort of been there.
Right.
So I got that sort of sense from it. Just falling in line more with the supernatural elements of the whole thing. The one thing that really bugged me was that Tracy Morgan approached what's her name, the other comedian, I don't know her name for the life of me. I know they mentioned it, the lesbian.
Yeah. Also I thought was odd that she specifically mentioned she's lesbian. Like, it's very in passing and kind of impromptu. Like, nothing prompts her mentioning it.
Yeah, no, it just seems like they tacked that on for some reason. I don't know, it didn't really affect her character in any way. It's just one way of identifying her, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, like right now. There we go, the lesbian.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything else to describe her. Yeah, but it's weird to me that Tracy Morgan approached her, right? Like, she's already a really successful comedian. She's already extremely popular. So, like, what would she have to gain by taking his advice? It's not like she's struggling to get laughs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But if you notice at the very end, when she's talking to him, and then it cuts to a bit of a further shot, and she's turned to her left, he's not there.
I think I remember that vaguely, but...
And other than that, as far as Easter eggs, there were a couple people in his contacts list, apparently, who were names of characters from previous episodes, which kind of hints that, and in the second episode, they kind of hint that all of these events are or could be part of one connected timeline, I guess, or world. And I kind of like that. I think that's pretty interesting, because after all, they all are in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the sense I got. And if you watch a lot of the Twilight Zone episodes, it sort of implies that it's all happening in this reality, and that all these events are happening in the same world, and that, I guess the Twilight Zone is just an alternate dimension where all of these things are interconnected.
A dimension between light and shadow, between science and superstition. It lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. Your next stop at the signpost up ahead. All right.
Okay, we've been talking for this long enough.
Yeah. Anyway, that's basically it. So I hope it gets better, and I hope it gets shorter.
And I hope Jordan Peele has more of a presence. Because let's be honest, Jordan Peele's awesome.
What you just saw was a clip from our full show, The Utterly Nonsense Podcast, which airs every Friday. So click any of the links on the screen or subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. And let us know in the comments what you think. Thanks for listening.